From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Hey everyone, I am Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live, the show where you get to ask the questions to today's top composers. I'm happy to have you here. If there's a scoring warrior that filmmaker Ridley Scott repeatedly sends into his historical Thunderdomes, then it's Harry Gregson-Williams. In the director's lavishly visceral epics, he's musically battled at the gates of Jerusalem, defended the honor of a knight's wife in combat to the death, and helped guide Moses past the Egyptian army. He's chronicled the lust and murder within the House of Gucci, and on a slightly more peaceful note, has helped the Martian return to Earth. Though often given a cast of iconic characters who might be hundreds of years old, they couldn't be more musically alive given Harry Gregson-Williams' ability to arm them with his rousing symphonies, intoxicating electronics, and way with ancient instruments and vocals. Now, Williams is faced with the ultimate challenge of taking up the Oscar-winning sword of Gladiator from his longtime compatriot Hans Zimmer as he passes it from Maximus to his son Lucius, whom, like father, like son, is thrown from being a proud warrior to defending his life in the Roman Colosseum, proving more than a match for the animals, massively armored warriors, and the politics of crazed emperors. They're thrown at Williams in a rousingly epic score that establishes its own thrilling identity, all while paying tribute to the sandy musical battleground that's come before, in a sequel that delivers the bloody, battling goods and drama in Ridley Scott's distinctive style. And now here to talk about giving the son of Maximus his own furious musical identity is Harry Gregson-Williams. Welcome to the arena of Film Music Live, Harry.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great having you here. Now, when you get a sequel to such like an epic, iconic movie, is it almost freeing in a way to, kind of go your own way, to try to do your own thing and not like equal whatever?
Freeing, I wouldn't use that expression. My goodness. I mean, I'm no stranger to sequels. I've done the Shrek series and Narnia and a few equalizers here and there and a couple of Megs. But I did the original scores for those. So, yeah, there wasn't much freeing about this at all. There was a lot that was thrilling about it, exciting and challenging. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm operating in the shadow of one of the most iconic films in the last 25 years. And with it, people seem to hold Hans's score in great esteem, quite rightly. So, yeah, I mean, starting out on this sort of journey was tricky. I mean, I was full of anxiety and trepidation, but also really happy to have been asked to do it. So make no mistake, I was excited about it and thrilled to be asked by Ridley. Freeing, no, not at all.
Now, one thing, I particularly love your historical epics that you've done for Ridley, particularly the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven. Do you find that he's in a different mode when he's doing a historical film as opposed to something like Prometheus?
I don't know about that. I mean, Prometheus was quite epic as well in its own way. Not that I really worked very closely with him on that film. It has to be said, I joined the party very late on in that and really just wrote a theme and variations that he snuck into the film. So I couldn't really comment on Prometheus that much. But with The Martian, Kingdom of Heaven, I suppose the experiences are fairly similar. Kingdom of Heaven, Gladiator, The Last Duel, but only really the stories are very different. My roles were quite different in those other movies. With Gladiator II, I had to reconcile the fact that I was operating within a franchise. I don't know what you call it, a DNA of something that's already established. So I had to treat that with respect and with care. And I'd found once I'd kind of put my anxieties to one side and really got going, I found my way in by plotting kind of where I felt I wanted to quote Hans's theme from the first movie. And I discussed that with Ridley, and we realized that we didn't want to overdo it. There was no need to do, and we wanted to establish our own sound and our own thematic material. However, towards the end of the script in Gladiator II, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages from the end, it literally says, "This is the moment Lucius becomes Maximus." So, that was an invitation to use Hans's tune right there. So, in order to make that feel not too gratuitous and make it feel deserved and earned by the audience, I had to kind of think, sort of backtrack and think, well, if I'm going to arrive at that spot and give the audience what they probably have been yearning for, warm, fuzzy feeling at the end of this film, how am I going to make it feel like what's come before it belongs to the same world? So, re-listening to Hans's main theme from Gladiator, it's very, very Hansian, isn't it? The 2 phrases are kind of almost identical, and then they're repeated and repeated and repeated. So we have that. I looked at it and thought, well, I kind of like this diving 7th business he's got going on, this descending. Why don't I try and incorporate that into part of Lucius's thematic material that I'll lay out throughout the film, so that when I want Lucius's theme to become Maximus's theme, it'll feel like it's kind of from the same family. So that was kind of my way in. And actually, I wrote the track on the record. I think I called "Strength and Honor." That was the first thing I wrote without the picture. In fact, Ridley had only sent me half a film because they were all on strike or whatever. And he'd only been able to shoot half a film at that point. And I wasn't really concerned with scoring individual scenes at that stage. I was more concerned about getting myself into the right mode and getting Ridley behind me. So I thought, well, if I fiddle with this 7th thing, and it might bring me into the world that I need to be in, and inspire further thematic material, which is original and doesn't belong to Hans, or doesn't belong to his, the DNA of his theme. And I wrote 3 or 4 minutes using these descending 7th things that then becomes something akin to Maximus's theme. I played it for Rid, and he said, "Look, this is a great direction." But strangely enough, when I came to score the film, well, maybe it's not strange, but there was no opportunity for me to play that piece from beginning to end anywhere in the film, and there just wasn't. And so I said this to Ridley, and he said, well, obviously I want you to use the thematic material that you've developed. You use that in scoring the film, and let's put this first in the end credits, because he really loved the piece of music. As it happened, wasn't my decision at all, but we ended up going with "Now We Are Free" first out of the gate in the end credits, so it was shunted back a little bit. But it was a useful exercise for me, because it showed me that I could write a tune that contained this descending 7th, and that while scoring the film, I could deploy it in all manner of different ways. I use it considerably in the first 20 minutes of the film, but you may be forgiven for not realizing that that's what it is then, because we're just introducing it. And it's I throw it around the basses and lower orchestra up into the top. I'm just kind of flexing my muscles with it, if you like, within the action music that needed to be written for the Roman invasion of Numidia at the beginning of the film. And also, having decided independently of that I was going to write that cue in 7/8 time, not 4/4 time or 6/4, which Hans's tune would be, then it just set that apart, and I could operate slightly separately to anything that had come in the first movie. But with Lucius, it was quite clear looking at his character that, he starts as kind of a humble, I don't know, what is he, a chicken keeper? He starts at the beginning of the film with a bunch of chickens, living a rural life and seemingly peaceful, with the love of his life. So it was really nice to be able to set out a slightly different thematic approach for his character, which didn't involve the sevenths and didn't involve anything heroic. And that was this little woodwindy thing. So it was a high ancient flute called a ney. That's probably about historically, it's probably about as close as accurate as I could get, because it's probably about 4,000 years old, that instrument, but probably originated in Egypt or somewhere. I'm not sure, but so it's a little echoey motif, which we hear towards the film we first meet Lucius, and I was able to use that part of his thematic material throughout the film as a kind of device to draw him towards his destiny, his ancestry. That's what I mean to say, because ultimately he's drawn towards the person that he comes to realize is his mother, and so this little echoey woodwind thing I was able to use just gently here and there, and that was the device that I used.
Now, you mentioned the ney, which brings us to our first question from Louis Versellini. Now, when crafting the score for Gladiator II, did you use any unusual or ancient instruments? I guess what other ancient instruments are in the score?
Yeah, well, if you've seen the film or heard the music at all, you'll know that the answer to that is yes. I did use quite a few ancient instruments. Whether they will be instruments the Romans would have played, I don't know. I can't speak to that. I mean, I did I collaborate with this chap Abraham Cupiro, who I found in a field in northern Spain, and he not only plays a lot of these instruments, but he makes them, from, I don't know, horns of various animals, various brassy things, ancient flutes, some stuff that's pulled out of the sea, so large shells with holes drilled in them. So yeah, I think a lot of these instruments are based on literature that we have, or paintings or etchings. These are about as historically accurate as I could get. I try to avoid some of the tropes that I've been guilty of using in a couple of my film scores. The Prince of Persia as one, which is the duduk. I think I used it maybe a couple of times, and it's got such a silky, beautiful sound. I couldn't avoid it altogether. But yeah, so Abraham played a lot of these instruments. I went down and recorded what he had to offer and brought them back here to my studio, shoved them in. Oh, where is it? I can't seem to point in the right direction. Oh, there. Cubase. And had that as part of my template, and that's really the joy and the fun of doing a score like this, because one gets to, I don't know, help create a world, as opposed to doing, I don't know, a romantic comedy set today, where that's possibly not the job. But part of the aim of a score on a film like this is to help make the world believable that we're being plunged into.
I mean, that's one thing I love about Ridley's movies, is that you can almost taste the dirt, and you are there. But another thing I really love about your scoring, we were talking a little bit about one of my favorite things of yours, which is Smell a Sense of Snow, is you really have a beautiful use of electronic, ethereal music. And that brings us to a question from Mike Georgina. He noticed that you tend to have a fairly sparse, almost minimalist layers in area light instrumentation. What's your process of inspiration with instruments and arranging in that respect?
He talks about sparse and minimalist. I don't know. I don't know whether I really connect with that comment. I mean, I know that I've often But let's put it this way: many directors who've had to direct me in my film scoring journey so far, very few of them, if any, have said, "Oh my God, too much, too much! You're hitting the nail on the head. Far too much, much too much." Quite the reverse. I'm quite sensitive, and I think in the way that I go about scoring a movie, I don't like to be. That doesn't mean to say I can't be big and ballsy, but I don't like to. I like to credit the audience with some intelligence, give them something to think about. I think there have been many a director who said to me, "Actually, Harry, you can give us more there in the scene, a little more emotion." And it's not that I'm scared of that, the emotion, but I do. Over the years, many movies have been spoiled by clumsy composers treading all over the emotional beats of a scene. For me, yeah, call me mad, but so I don't ever do that. By the same token, maybe I have to be encouraged to go a little further with emotion, and I think with action, I think I normally tune into where I need to be, but with the emotional beats, it's I think it's easy to overstep the mark as a composer, and I try not to do that. But you mentioned in ethereal and minimalist. Well, I hope it's not too minimal. If it's too minimal, it's not very effective, is it?
Now, I just love how this particular Gladiator film really goes for it. I mean, you've got sharks, you've got rhinos. And this brings us to a question from Brian Michael Fuller. How do you push your boundaries creatively when working within the constraints of a film's tone or budget? I guess maybe here it's tone.
Yeah, it's interesting we use that word tone, because that's actually one of the words that Ridley uses with me when trying to direct me musically. He's first and foremost an artist, as you can see from his films. He's got an incredible eye. And visually, it's so exciting what he can put on the screen. But he talks to me about tone a lot. For instance, one of the first quiet scenes after towards the end of the Numidian invasion by the Roman navy, when Lucius falls into the sea, and there's this kind of supernatural moment, which Ridley called Styx for obvious reasons, STYX, and I loved that moment. Now, in that piece of score that I put there, I was able to do a few things. And I was aware in that scene, I was able to do a few things that I wouldn't be doing in any other part of the movie, just because of its the heightened reality of the situation. We could see that it was kind of a dream thing, or that sort of thing. I was able to. I think I hopped over to the piano over there and played a kind of got it back into Cubase and flipped it over. So I reversed the thing, so it's more, or actually it would be backwards. I can't sing it backwards. So there's some synth elements in there which really I thought brought something to it. And Ridley had said to me in that scene, not going to be too much sound, just over to music. I really want you to bring a silvery, dark tone to the scene. And he often talks to me in terms of color, light, darkness, because these are expressions that he understands from his own love of art and his own understanding of art. So I think we meet in a good place in that respect.
Now, Frank, William first would love to know, were there any specific scenes or characters in Gladiator II that were particularly inspiring or challenging to score?
Yeah, let's see. Well, the scene that I've just mentioned, the stick scene, was really inspiring to do. I really loved that, and actually, really didn't give that to me until very late. I don't know whether it was something they shot very late in the day or something, but I found the Ravi character, the Doctor, quite inspiring. And actually, I mentioned earlier that Ridley shot half the movie, and then the actors were on strike, the writers were on strike, so he had to stop for quite a while. in that time, I don't know whether he'd been reviewing what he'd already shot, or whether he made a decision based on that, or what happened was there were some additional scenes with Ravi, just small scenes that were added to the film, which I thought were really sweet and really helped Lucius's character. And after all, there's a bond comes between Ravi and Lucius, so much so that Ravi's bold enough to give Lucius the keys to his cell, and Ridley wanted me to be quite delicate in those situations. Again, Ridley's can be quite subtle with the music, and he'd prefer to err on that side as opposed to bang the audience over the head with something. But there's a scene, that very scene where Lucius is in a cell and Ravi, he's kind of talk Ravi into getting a message to someone, and then handing over the keys to the cell. And this scene here was quite tricky for me to do, because I wanted them to feel like they were bonding there. I think that it was in that scene that I used quite extensively the viol consort fretwork, who I used on Kingdom of Heaven, first of all. And if you're not familiar with the viols, you may be, but they're a family of instruments that precede the orchestral ones that we know, the violin, the viola, and the cello, and consequently they're played in a slightly different way, and they make a slightly thinner sound, so that it's quite edgy. It's not played with lots of passion and rubato at all. It's played with difficulty by the look of it. It's played underhand with the bow. How's that?
Now, we would like to know, particularly in the case of Gladiator II, now when you come to begin your initial ideas for a score, where do you start? Do you head straight for the computer or pick up your go-to instrument?
No, my go-to is the piano, just where I feel most at home at the piano. I try and leave programming, the computer programming side of our work, until a little bit later, until I feel I've got some thematic material or maybe some harmonic shifts that I'm beginning to like. There are some things that I couldn't experiment with on the piano. For instance, with Macronus's theme, I really felt that I wanted an instrument that was able to slip and slide around. Immediately thought of my friend Martin Tillman, who plays electric cello. Unfortunately, he moved back to where he came from, which is Zurich in Switzerland, a couple of years ago. But that didn't stop me jumping on a plane and taking him some music and interacting with his wonderful musicianship that he can bring to the thing. So that sort of thing, I kind of have to be in the room with a musician to experiment with. But in general, I'll sit at the piano with the film going on the screen over there, and I'll, just because I'm comfortable at the piano, I'm not no great shakes. I'm not some concert pianist, but I'm comfortable at the piano. I've played it all my life. And I can begin to work out some thematic material, see where that might lead me. And when I've written out some things that actually mean something to me, way before I share anything with Ridley or any other director, I'll move over to Cubase and start arranging those things sonically, so that there's very little piano, if any, in Gladiator. But that doesn't mean to say that I wouldn't start there.
Now, we've got a question from Pranav. Again, I particularly loved how you kind of put your own spin on Hans's iconic themes. How much of the material beyond from the first film did you use? And how did you make it sound different for yourself? I mean, again, you have the wonderful Lisa Gerrard coming back and singing the end song here as well.
Well, that's nothing to do with me. The song "Now We Are Free," that was Ridley's choice to put it on the end of the movie, and that I wouldn't think. If we're discussing the score, that's really got nothing to do with it. Other than, of course, it's thematic to it. It's a beautiful piece. It wasn't my choice, but that's what the decision was, and I supported it. It's a beautiful piece, and I hope it gave everybody that sort of warm, familiar feeling. But as concerns, no, I mean, I think on the record, I probably put about 70 minutes of music. I definitely wrote 120 minutes of music, and there's probably 100 minutes of music within the film. So there's a lot of music in there. I think about 6 minutes of which is connected to Gladiator I, particularly with Hans's theme from that. Lisa, I re-recorded her the vocals that she did, but I hope if you've seen the film or heard the record, you'll hear many other vocal contributions, as well as from the wonderful spiritual Lisa Gerard. It seemed natural to want to bring her back. Her sound was so sort of iconic and connected to the first film. But some of the other vocalists I used, Gigi, this girl I found who actually I was pointed towards her, and I was searching for a North African vocalist. A friend of mine who was the music editor on the first movie, apparently Adam Smalley, alerted me to the fact that he said, you should listen to this girl. She's got there's a record on Spotify. I found an a cappella track. It was a whole record of different artists, but I found this particular track. I really liked the quality of her voice, and I liked that it was. I researched her a little bit and found that she was Ethiopian, so that kind of worked. From New Media, maybe sort of northern Africa. But we searched high and low for this girl, this lady. Couldn't find her. Could find no trace of her. So I actually sampled that something from that track and had Paramount license it. But by doing that, it was quite fun because I was able to. It was about a 2.5-minute a cappella track, so I kind of put the whole thing into my Cubase, and I only used about 6 or 8 seconds of it. But I was able to use whichever syllable. Not understanding Ethiopian, I guess I probably took some liberties there. I know I took some liberties there, and kind of reordered what she was singing, where she was singing, and harmonized it a little bit. Yeah, that was something that I came up with. Also, the weird and wonderful. Did I say weird? I don't mean weird. I mean wonderful. Leo Attar, who again another vocalist that I found who actually doesn't hail from these shores. He is an Australian singer-songwriter, Israeli-born. A wonderful chap. Never met him, but I contacted him once I'd heard some of this falsetto singing that he could do. So it really sounds, it could be a woman singing, but there was something just wonderful about the quality of his voice that I had to find a place for in the score. You can hear "I Need to Do This," I think, is a track on the soundtrack where you can really hear what he's up to. Yeah, and the inimitable Grace Davison, who's a leading soprano, British soprano. I had her sing on this score. I mean, a beautiful purity to her voice. It's quite amazing. So lots of colors, both vocal and instrumental.
No, I absolutely love Denzel Washington in this movie. He reminds me of the evil kind of Caesar guy that Captain Kirk would run into continually during the original Star Trek. With this big glowing clown. And you really think this guy's going to be the good guy, and he really is not. Tell me about scoring his character.
Yeah, I think I made mention a bit earlier that for Macronus, he's, particularly to begin with, one's not quite clear whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, whether he's a force for good or not. So having taken some music over to my friend Martin Tillman, who plays electric cello, I had to utilize these kind of slipping and sliding figures to create a motif that was ambiguous in its intentions. And actually, I precursed that at the beginning of the film over the Romans, with the cellos and basses in the orchestra doing a similar thing, but downstairs in the very bottom of the orchestra. So it became a little motif that I used, which characterized mistrust, sneakiness, cunningness. That's what I can say about that one. Yeah, no, he's a great character, wonderful.
Yeah, and again, one thing I really just love is the texture of this film. But again, Ridley, doesn't really seem to care. He's not trying to be historically accurate. Does that free you up? That, okay, we don't have to have this instrument from this year, or we can bring in a synthesizer? that kind
Well,
of thing.
I avoid exercises like the plague on this one, apart from in one spot, which I already told you about. So yeah, synths weren't ever a part of my sonic template at all. But having said that, who's to say what the Romans played or listened to? I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it was just the assignment was more about helping to build a world. I've heard some people, read some people criticize Ridley for putting sharks in the thing, but his point is, or putting water in the Colosseum. I mean, his point is, look, they had some of the most amazing aqueducts, which some of them still exist today, and drainage systems there. If they could use water like that, they could probably put water in there, probably. So who's to say they couldn't put some sharks in there? So musically speaking, I am using Arcanix, Adored. I'm using a consort of viols. All of these things are pretty ancient instruments, but not necessarily tied to the Roman era. If I was stuck with having to score a movie with things that definitely just came from the Roman era, you'd probably get a score made up of conch shells. I don't know. I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how I would effectively help tell the story. So it was all really about building a world that was immersive and brought the viewer into the story.
And again, a terrific job of it. And for my final question, I'd read that this was essentially the Godfather 2 of gladiator movies. So yeah. I think whatever third one we're going to get is going to be probably a lot better than Godfather 3. Where do you see this character going? Where do you see your music going for him?
Oh man, I don't count my chickens before they've hatched. Even coming from a composer who's done 2 movies with the word chicken in it. No, I don't expect to get a call from Ridley. I'm really happy to get a call from Ridley. He's got a lot of choice. He's worked with Vangelis, Jerry Goldsmith, James Horner, Hans Zimmer, to name but a few. So when I got a call to do Gladiator, it was a little alarming at first, given the fact that I used to work for Hans, and Hans is a buddy of mine. But I have got a little history with him now. I'm creeping up on having done quite a few movies with him, and I love the guy. I admire him, but I can't tell you that I know what's in his mind. I read that about Gladiator 3, but that's very Ridley. He's not standing still. He's always looking forward, and that's what's exciting about being around him. Is he's not stagnated. He's ambitious. He's throwing ideas around all the time. And it's exciting. I have no idea. I would hope I'd work with Rid again, but we'll just have to see about that.
Well, Harry, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us at Film Music Live. Watch Gladiator 2 in theaters with Harry's score available on Decca Records. A big thanks to Jeff Sanderson at Chasen Communications, Aaron Ryan at Verve Records, our show producer Dale Turner, executive producer Mark Northam, and graphic designer Mark Banning. I'll be seeing you on the next Film Music Live. Thumbs up for Gladiator 2.